18 years in an airport. The internet says it's true. Well, hey there, and welcome to The Internet Says It's True, where every week I talk about something that sounds like I just made it up out of thin air, but it's really actually true. This is part of the WCBE podcast experience. My name is Michael Kent. You already knew that. It's on the top of the podcast. It's on the art. You've seen it. Welcome back. This is episode 257. Later in the show, we'll be having magician Joan Ducour joining the show for the Yap Yap. She's a first-time guest. I'm excited for that. Stick around. If you enjoyed the show, you'll probably love the book. If you don't have it already, it just came out this month. It features more than 59, almost 60 stories we've covered on this podcast. And the best part of that is that each story is only 3 or 4 pages, so it's a perfect bathroom or nightstand book. I've been making jokes that the cover is antimicrobial for perfect, clean. It's a pooping book. You can poop with it. Anyway, and if you run out of paper, no, don't do that. Don't use the book. Anyway, it's super easy to read. On top of that, there's a QR code after each chapter, links to the podcast episode of that chapter, so you can listen to me quiz a guest about the topic that you're reading about. Anyway, it's available now wherever you buy your books. There's a link in the show notes. It'll take you directly there. As you may know, I spend a lot of time in airports, and I've never counted how many airports I've been to. Maybe one day I should do that. But I've been to a lot of them, and my longest layover was 9 hours in Athens, Greece. I didn't even stay in the airport. I toured around Athens and came back in time for my flight. This story is not like that. This story is about someone who stayed in an airport for almost 2 decades. Why? Well, we'll get into that. This is the story of Mehran Karimi Nassiri. Before we zero in on Nassiri's story, there have been others caught in analogous situations. People trapped in airports, sort of stateless without documents, or in legal limbo. Their stories help us see while Nassiri's is extraordinary, it also reflects deeper issues of nationality, bureaucracy, human dignity, and identity in general. One often cited example is the case of humans being stranded between countries due to visa or passport problems. For example, migrants stuck in transit zones because no country will accept them, or because their travel documents are invalid or lost or conflicting. And these transit zone cases have appeared in the news many times, though few endure for years, and almost none have the celebrity or myth-like quality that Nassiri's did. Statelessness in international law also plays a role. Individuals with no recognized nationality may be unable to enter any country's territory formally, unable to prove identity or accepted documentation, leaving them in a sort of limbo. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights asserts everyone has the right to a nationality, but many live without one. Through the years, there have been fictional and semi-fictional accounts in literature that describe people who reside in airports because they've fled war or persecution and their papers are lost or rejected. There have been films, too. Airport limbo has been used as a motif or plot device. There's the film Lost in Transit. It's a French film, aka Tombes du Ciel. You guys know me in French pronunciations, just very bad at them. Anyway, it's explicitly inspired by a man losing his passport and spending time in the Paris airport. So the idea of an airport as a sanctuary, a prison, home, a border, sort of purgatory, it's part of modern imagination, especially when legal identity fails or when states' rules clash with each other. So let's get into Nassiri's story in full. Mehran Karimi Nassiri was born in 1945 in the Iranian province of Khuzestan in a town called Mashed al-Salaman. His father, Abdelkarim, worked as a doctor for the Anglo-Persian Oil Company. Nassiri grew up relatively well off, though his own accounts of family are contradictory in some respects. He claimed at different times that his mother was Scottish or Swedish, or that he had been born as the result of an affair. Investigations can't really substantiate these claims. Most credible sources say his mother was Iranian. In 1973, at about age 28, Nassiri went to the United Kingdom to study Yugoslav studies at the University of Bradford. He insisted that the degree was real, and there is documentation supporting that he did in fact spend time in Bradford. He later returned to Iran, and here the stories diverge. Nassiri claimed he'd been expelled from Iran in 1977 for political activism, protests against the Shah. But some investigations find little corroboration. No solid record has ever really emerged confirming that the Iranian authorities officially expelled him or that he was detained or tortured, etc. Some claims appear to have been exaggerated or repeated over time, and there's just been no third-party confirmation. In 1981, he was granted refugee status by Belgium. The triggering event for his airport residency came in 1988. Nassiri reported that his refugee papers and passport were lost or stolen while he was in Paris or en route. Another version is that he mailed his refugee documents to Brussels and thus didn't have them when needed. Because without valid papers, he could not board flights, and because entering France without valid identity would lead to detention, he found himself stuck in a sort of legal no man's land. He attempted to travel to the UK, but upon arrival in Britain, immigration officials refused entry because he lacked proper documentation. He was essentially returned to France, and then in France, he couldn't leave the airport's transit international zone without papers. He could not be admitted into the country, but he could not travel onward either. Thus began his long period at Charles de Gaulle International Airport. The date often given is August 26, 1988, as when he first took up residence in Terminal 1. For nearly 18 years, from 1988 until July 2006, Nassiri lived in Terminal 1 at Charles de Gaulle Airport. What did that look like day to day, year to year? Imagine what that is to live in an airport. Well, he carved out a space between a pizzeria and an electronics store. 2 red plastic benches pushed together to sleep on, and his luggage was always by his side. He kept a journal, and sometimes he wrote. He listened to the radio a lot. He smoked a gold pipe. Meals were sometimes bought for him by strangers or donated by airport staff. He was, in effect, homeless, but in a place full of people always coming and going. His home was publicly accessible, yet unreachable by law. He could access food because there were fast food restaurants in the terminal, and people would occasionally give him toiletries or leave food, and airport staff became aware of him, young and old, sometimes offering, little bits of help. He avoided accepting some forms of help, though. He declined donations, except in very special cases. He reportedly rejected paperwork offered by Belgium or France because of how paperwork labeled him, or because it didn't match his preferred identity. He insisted on being called Sir Alfred Meron, for example. And over time, he became something of a known figure. Everyone called him Sir Alfred. The immigration and airport staff, they all knew him as Sir Alfred. And there's some evidence that this was due to a miswriting or a misunderstanding of his preferred identity, and then he just embraced it. He was treated with varying degrees of sympathy and frustration by bureaucrats. Sometimes people said that he was fossilizing at his bench, or that he was unable to live outside again. He'd been institutionalized in the airport. One of his friends or acquaintances said worrying things about whether he could survive in the outside world. Authorities in France, Belgium, and sometimes the UK debated on what to do. Both France and Belgium actually offered him residency at times. But the problem was often paperwork, identity, his refusal to sign certain forms, or to accept the nationality as labeled in the paperwork. For example, the documents offered often listed him as Iranian rather than British. At one point, Belgian authorities offered him entry under supervision of a social worker, but he refused because he didn't want their terms. In 1992, a French court ruled that Nassiri had entered the airport legal as a refugee and so could not be expelled legally from the airport. Coming up after the break, we'll explore how Nassiri's story made its way into popular culture, including Steven Spielberg's The Terminal and the French film Lost in Transit, and what parts of the myth diverge from the messy, complicated truth. Also, what happened to him after 2006 in his final days. Be right back.
Hey, I'm Cliff Baumgardner.
And I'm Harrison Stewart.
If you're like us, you probably grew up watching the Discovery Channel classic, Mythbusters.
From rocket cars to chicken cannons, Mythbusters proved there's no question too big, too small, or too ridiculous to put to the test.
Now we're going back to rewatch the show from episode 1, and we want you to follow along. Join us as we revisit every single myth, moment, experiment, and explosion from throughout the show's legendary 14 seasons. Subscribe now so you don't miss one.
If you love listening to this podcast every week and you want to show your support, that would mean a great deal to me. You can do that by becoming a Patreon member. We've got members at all levels, whether you want to pledge $1 a month or $10 a month. Just think about the value that you receive from this show. And if you like the histories and the stories that you learn about or the jokes that you hear, and if you think that they're worth it, consider signing up. For that, you get every episode ad-free and a week early, access to bonuses like the unedited videos of the guest appearances, and 20% off all merchandise. You can sign up today at patreon.com/Michael Kent. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent. There was a time that humans used 100% organic products as healing balms and moisturizers for their skin. Well, I've partnered with an awesome company that wants to get back to those times. Fatco sells organic and responsibly made tallow-based skincare products. For centuries, humans used tallow in skin moisturizers and healing balms, but unfortunately, the topical application of these fats seemed to stop around the same time that animal fats stopped being considered part of a healthy diet. A lot of modern skincare products do more harm than good by stripping your skin of its natural oils. Let's change that. You can try them out now at fatco.com and get 15% off your order by using my promo code INTERNET. Go to theinternetsaysitstrue.com/deals for the link.
I'm John DeSando, host of Back Talk. This podcast is an extension of the long-running, award-winning movie review show, It's Movie Time. Back Talk features additional content and banter with guests about new movies. If you want more insight and information about what's playing now in theaters and online, find Back Talk at the WCBE Podcast Experience on WCBE.org. You'll be happy you did.
Nassiri's life inspired at least 2 films directly. The French film Lost in Transit, directed by Philippe Lioré in 1993, is about a man who loses his passport and spends time in a Paris airport where he meets others in similar situations. And that film is explicitly inspired by Nassiri's predicament. And then there's the 2004 film The Terminal, directed by Steven Spielberg and starring Tom Hanks. It is often cited as being loosely based on Nassiri's story. DreamWorks bought rights in 2003. In The Terminal, fictional Viktor Navorsky arrives at JFK Airport after his country undergoes a political coup. His passport becomes invalid and he cannot enter the U.S. He can't return home, so he lives in the airport terminal. And while the basic premise resembles Nassiri's situation, many of the details diverge. The characters, settings, motivations are sort of shifted for dramatic and comedic effect. You know, Victor's fictional, his home country in the movie is fictional, and the whole legal and emotional journey is compressed. Now, Nassiri was reportedly paid for rights, though according to some sources, Spielberg's film does not mention Nassiri directly in the credits or in any publicity. So the mythic version, bench, airport employees befriending him, the spectacle, the internal monologue, the waiting, that's all entered the public imagination. But the truth is often harder. Long wait, legal entanglements, identity claims that are ambiguous, health issues, offers rejected, conflict with authorities, then eventual hospitalization, shelter, a return to some airport presence. In July 2006, Nassiri's 18-year stay at the airport officially ended when he was hospitalized. He had developed health problems, and when he was hospitalized, his makeshift home, his bench living arrangements were dismantled. After some time in a hospital, he was looked after by the French Red Cross, lodged temporarily in a hotel near the airport, and then eventually transferred to a charity reception center in Paris. From about 2008 onwards, he lived in a shelter in Paris, but later in life, in 2022, he returned to the airport. The last weeks before his death were reportedly spent again in or around Charles de Gaulle. On November 12, 2022, he died of a heart attack inside the airport, Terminal 2F, at age 77. Throughout his time, Nassiri often expressed that he rejected forms of identity or nationality that didn't match what he believed to be true. He insisted on the name Sir Alfred Meron. He refused certain documents because they identified him as Iranian when he believed or claimed he was British or born somewhere else. When asked whether he regretted the years lost in an airport terminal, he reportedly said in 2003 something like, "I'm not angry, I just want to know who my parents are." That's a pretty striking sentiment. It's less about bitterness, more about identity and belonging. Nassiri's story raises a lot of questions. What does it mean to be stateless? What responsibility do states have to people without papers? How human dignity perseveres, or at least tries to persevere, under limbo? What role mythology and storytelling play in shaping such a life? The airport as neutral space becomes kind of a microcosm for borders, law, identity, and the passing of time. At the time of his death, observers noted that despite fame, his situation remained complicated. Though he inspired movies, documentaries, an entire opera, and autobiography, his identity remained contested. The name, the nationality, and his legal status, they were never fully settled in a way that seemed to satisfy him. His story is both extraordinary and tragic. Extraordinary for the endurance, the human character, the public attention. It was tragic for the years lost, the cold, bureaucratic structures, and the solitude of legal statelessness. The internet says it's true. It's time for Yap Yap. This is the part of the podcast where I call a friend, and today I'm meeting a new friend. This is Joan Ducour. Now, Joan is from Honolulu, Hawaii, and began a performing career as a dancer, as a ballet dancer, but then she loved playing cards, and that got her into magic. And this is my first time meeting Joan, so I'm learning this along with you. A few years ago, and this is maybe like probably a decade ago, Caesar's Magical Empire was the place in Las Vegas to see magic. And when she moved to Las Vegas, she got a job at Caesar's Magical Empire. She went on to be one of the environmental performers at the Venetian, doing close-up magic and parlor magic, and then toured with her show. She's performed on stage, she's been on TLC, she's been on HGTV, in the Linking Ring and Genie magazine, which are magicians magazines, and she was a recipient of the Milbourne Christopher Award for Magic Excellence. You should look up Milbourne Christopher if you're not familiar. That's a very highly regarded award. And she's here because she's a listener, and she said, I would love to come on sometime, and I needed a guest, and this worked out perfectly. So it's so good to see you, Joan. How are you?
Hello, it's good to be here. I've been listening to your show since like somewhere in 2020.
That's crazy. We started somewhere in 2020. So you're a ride or die with The Internet Says It's True. And you're joining me from LA, is that correct? Or you're West
actually,
Coast?
I'm in Las Vegas.
You're that's right, you're Vegas. Okay, and you live in Vegas full time now?
Full time. I've been here since the late 1900s, and yeah. But I like visiting LA.
It's fantastic. Now we're meeting for the first time today, but we've been Facebook friends, and I'm Facebook friends with a lot of magicians that I've never met, and I've followed your career. You're always working, always very busy, and you do a lot of like social media videos, which are great. So it's cool to meet another fellow worker, another performer, you know. But I had no idea that you grew up in Hawaii. How did that?
Born and raised.
Now, were your parents born and raised in Hawaii?
So my mother was born and raised in Hawaii. My father's from New York, but he used to be head of the drama department at University of Hawaii.
Wow.
He's also a drama critic and stuff. And my mom was an actress, and they first met when he gave her like a bad review in a play. So
that's what a great story.
Match made in heaven right there.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So you were called to do this. This was a family thing. You didn't have an option other than being in the performing arts.
They really highly discouraged me being in the performing arts.
Really?
My dad's in academia now. So, he's got a PhD. He has a regular paycheck. So he's like, don't be in the arts. And my mom left acting to be a writer. And she's like, this is too hard. You need to be a nuclear physicist so you can support me in my old age. And then I said, screw it. I'm going to be a performer.
Love it. And never looked back. And it seems like it's working out. So that's good. That's good.
So far, so good. Before
we get on to the topic of today, did you bring with you like a new fact that maybe we haven't heard before?
I did. I got very excited because you had an episode about a guitar in a movie.
Yes.
And
Kurt Russell.
And you said that you really like things in movies that weren't meant for that movie, that came from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So, in The Wizard of Oz, do you know whose carriage they rode in when they went through Emerald City?
No, I've never heard this.
It belonged to Abraham Lincoln.
What?
It was a gift to Abraham Lincoln. And of course, he couldn't really accept it because he was president. And we know that's how things are supposed to go. But
Supposed to
and
go.
so, and then
That-
they used it in the movie. They had it in storage somewhere and they were like, let's use this. And there you go.
This is the horse of a different color carriage?
When they're going through the Emerald City, I haven't actually seen the movie in so long. I can't tell you.
That
But,
must be it. Yeah, because they ride in a carriage through Emerald City when the horse keeps changing color,
Yes.
and we're not supposed to notice that it also keeps changing breeds. But that's beside the point. But yeah, so that's incredible, and I'm doing a deep dive that may even be worthy of an episode. I'm definitely putting that on my list to look into. That's crazy. I actually spent a long time whenever we did that episode with Kurt Russell on it, and I was talking about how I love these items in movies that are sort of hidden, have a history. Like for instance, the burning of Atlanta in Gone with the Wind. They were burning the sets from King Kong.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's just like they had this stuff sitting around, and they were like, we need stuff to burn. And all of these flats that they had used as a city in King Kong, they just burned them to make the city look like it's burning. I love stuff like that. And it's really hard to find evidence of these things in movies because the studios don't talk about it. It's usually, it's only the people that worked on the films. So you can find them in books sometimes, and every once in a while. We did another episode, and this one I believe did make the book, about how there was a piece of art hanging in the Stuart Little movie that it turned out this piece of art that was just used as set decoration was a priceless masterpiece of this Hungarian painter. And
Oh,
nobody
wow.
knew it. It had been picked up at like a garage sale or something. And there was
I
an
think I remember this one. Yeah.
Yeah, there was like an art critic that saw it and was like, that can't be. And it turned out it was. And it had been used in different movies and TV shows before that. So, well, with all that said, that was amazing, by the way. I love that. I'm going to write it down. Abraham Lincoln's carriage in The Wizard of Oz. Here's your first question. For the first question, we always play for a joke. So if you get it wrong, you got to tell me a joke. If you get it right, I'll tell you one. Question 1. A man named Mehran Karimi Nasiri spent 18 continuous years from 1988 to 2006 in an unusual place. Where was it? Is what some unusual place that he spent
an unusual place.
18
All right.
years. A, in an airport. B, on his roof. Or C, in a pool.
I really want to say A because I think I've heard of this, but it could be just it could be just that it just sounds familiar because of the Tom Hanks movie, but I'm gonna go with A.
The answer is A. Yeah, that's basically he was stateless, and at least claimed he was stateless from it's a very convoluted, confusing story because even after he was stateless, there were nations that were sort of offering him citizenship, and I think they were just like, look, Charles de Gaulle Airport, we'll help you get rid of this guy out of your Terminal A if we'll offer him citizenship. But then he would always complain about he didn't want to sign the paperwork because it didn't align with his identity. He saw himself. And eventually, I think what happened was a sort of, it's not Stockholm syndrome when it's like an inanimate object that you're stuck in, but like he was institutionalized in an airport. I don't think he wanted to leave. And he was like, well, I like to be called Sir Alfred now. That was not his name. Alfred wasn't any part of Mehran Karimi Nasiri's name. But people had started calling him Sir Alfred. And so he refused paperwork unless it said Sir Alfred. And then he was like, well, I can't accept a Belgium passport because I see myself as Iranian, or, there was like a whole different, like there was always an excuse for him to not accept the paperwork. And he basically was granted refugee status in this airport. And that's why he was there for 18 years, basically lived on a bench and created a little apartment in this corner between two stores. Kind of crazy, crazy story.
I think I read about it in like one of those like little fact books.
Yes.
I love those things. And I think I didn't know the whole story about him turning down stuff, but like it triggered something. I'm like, I know I've heard this.
Yeah. Well, if we do 2 more volumes of my book, which I plan on doing, that'll be in one of those fact books for me too. This would be a good one for that. Well, for this, so I owed you a joke, and I found one that's a little bit long, but it made me laugh. So I'll read it nonetheless. An airliner is sitting at the gate, fully boarded, flight attendants ready to go. There's no pilots though. Eventually, they do show up, but they're wearing dark sunglasses, carrying white canes, and they're bumping into the walls trying to get into the cockpit. So the people laugh because they assume this is just a big joke. But the flight deck and the main cabin doors close, and a tug pushes the plane back before pulling it all the way into the runway. They're lined up, the tug detaches, drives away, and people are getting nervous. The engine spools for takeoff. As the plane accelerates, the anxiety in the flight cabin increases, and the tension grows. The amount of runway diminishes, and finally the plane's about to go off the end of the runway, and the passengers lose it. They're screaming their heads off, but then just in time, the plane rotates, it takes off without incident, it goes up in the air. About 20 minutes later, one pilot says to the other, "You know what? One of these days they're not going to scream and we won't know when to take off."
I like it.
That one made me laugh. I'd never heard that one before. So, yeah.
I will be telling that to my fiance later.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, that's a good one. It's a little long, but it gets there. Question 2, we're going to play for a first-class ticket to Ireland. Or a pint of Guinness, whichever ends up being cheaper.
Okay.
Which one of these airports is frequently ranked as the best airport in the world? Is it A, the Ninoy Aquino International Airport? This is Manila, Philippines. B, the Mohammed V International Airport in Casablanca, Morocco. Or C, Singapore Changi Airport in Singapore. So Philippines,
Okay,
Morocco, or Singapore.
I have been to the Singapore airport. I don't really remember it, but I kind of am leaning towards Singapore because Singapore is just known for like the streets are clean, everything is perfect. I don't think it's Morocco. And what was the other one?
Manila, Philippines.
Yeah, it's got to be Singapore.
The answer is Singapore.
Yes.
Yeah, it's noted for its cleanliness, because Singapore is cleanliness. But it's also has like a really well thought out design. It's notorious for an enormous amount of shopping options, different cuisines, and there are even gyms and a swimming pool in the Changi Airport.
We have a gym in our airport here.
Do you really?
Yeah, there's there's
McCarran?
another podcast that focuses on Las Vegas, and they did one about the hidden gems in the Harry Reid Airport, and there's like a gym and a rest area and a place you can do shower. I'm not sure about the
Yeah.
showers. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
But there's like a lot of stuff you wouldn't unless you searched for it,
It was either Changi, Singapore, or Narita in Tokyo, where I actually used one of those sleep pods.
Oh, wow.
That you can buy. Yeah, and I love it because I think I would do really well on like a tour bus if I had to sleep in one of those little like things, because I love just like being confined when I'm sleeping, like I think
Mhm.
I always sleep really well in sleeping bags, and I slept so well in that. Now I will say I haven't been to Casablanca, Morocco airport, but I have been to the airport in Manila, Philippines. It was the worst airport I've ever been to in my life.
I kind of guessed that from people I know who'd been to the Philippines, but I wasn't 100%.
So, there are always these lists of like best airports and worst airports. In the Casablanca, Morocco airport and the Manila, Philippines airport are usually ranked among the worst. But Changi is usually number 1. It's just an amazing airport. Now, another one that's up there, I finally went to for the first time last year, and that's Hamad International Airport in Doha, Qatar. That airport was incredible. It was,
I can
it blew
imagine.
my mind. It reminded me of the chocolate room in Willy Wonka, where it's like, like the river goes through and there's like fountains and trees everywhere indoors with like a biodome type sphere above you. It felt like that. There was a Bugatti store, I think. There was
Oh my
some like
goodness.
high-end car store in the middle. I'm like, who is buying a Bugatti on their layover? This is crazy.
A lot of those Arabic countries, though, they go all out.
They
Like,
do. The
I've been to
disparity.
Dubai, and it's like just
There's a
amazing.
huge income disparity in some of these countries. Like the major cities are huge, but then like it's nothing outside of the city, you know.
And the people that work do not have any protections that built that beauty. And none at
Sadly,
all.
that's true. Yeah. So you will either get, before getting that correct, either a first class ticket to Ireland or a pint of Guinness. I'll have to do the math and see which one of those is cheaper.
All right,
So
well,
question
if we
three.
could change it to Northern Ireland, because like Nicola lives there and I'd love to see her, that would be cool. you know.
We could do Northern Ireland. I probably can't do both. I think there's a thing about that, but we can do Northern. I've never been to either. I've never been anywhere in the UK.
I just a month ago learned that I had Northern Ireland and Ireland mixed up.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I thought that Ireland was part of UK and Northern Ireland was a separate thing, but it's actually the reverse.
It's the reverse. Yeah. And
I didn't know that.
There's a
Well, I
wonderful,
was reading
wonderful.
a book and
Have you seen the show Dairy Girls?
I have not,
It
but I
takes
read the book
place.
Factory Girls, and that's
Oh.
when I realized that I was backwards.
So if you, now you might have to watch with captions on because the Northern Ireland accents that they have from Londonderry are very thick. But it is so funny. It's about a bunch of high schoolers who are living in Northern Ireland in the height of the Troubles, right? When they're sort of skirmishing with Ireland, and they're just these high schoolers. And it's a very funny comedy series. I wish they would do more. I don't know if there are more coming or not, but Dairy Girls is the one.
I've heard wonderful things.
Yeah, really good. So for question 3, we're gonna play for a sticker. It's 3 inches, it's square, and it's sticky. And I'm happy to say, my friend Glenn Tickle, comedian who is on the podcast very often, was in town last week, and I finally gave him all the stickers that he has won over the years of being on the podcast. So you'll have one of these in your future if you get this right. What's the largest airport in the world by passenger volume? Okay. So this is not by area. This is by, in the whole world by passenger volume. Is it A, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport? That's in Georgia. B, Narita International Airport in Tokyo. Or C, Los Angeles International Airport in LA. One of these is the biggest by passenger volume. So it's Atlanta, Tokyo, or LAX.
I was just in Atlanta airport. But because of my fear of flying out of LAX and everyone's fear of even going anywhere near LAX, I gotta go with LAX.
The answer is Atlanta. Believe it or
Wow.
not. Yeah. So Atlanta sees
so
more
much
than
less scary than LAX.
It is, yeah. It sees more than 100 million passengers a year, and it's held that title of largest airport by passenger volume since '98. So it's for a long time been the busiest airport. I mostly fly Connect in Atlanta these days because I fly Delta, and that's their hub. And I know now sort of more of the layout, and I know when I see a flight and it's got less than 45 minutes or 50 minutes as my layover, not to book that flight in Atlanta, because I have been through at Atlanta when the trains are down and you have to walk from terminal to terminal underground, and it's the worst. It's horrible. And so now I require at least an hour in Atlanta to do that.
I require at least an hour anywhere. I don't trust it.
Yeah. Now another hub of Delta is Detroit, and I can get away with like a 45-minute layover there, but I have been burned by that too, where they have a SkyTrain, but it's weird, the layout of it, and you never know like if it's going to be quicker to take the SkyTrain, because how much we have to walk when you get off the SkyTrain. And anyway, but I have been burned on that, where it's like I have to go from one end of Detroit to the other, usually also underground. Yeah, Detroit's it's not a huge airport. It's just a weird layout. So
yeah,
when
I flew into Atlanta, I just missed my flight because by the time the plane landed, I had 5 minutes, and they're like,
you can't do that in Atlanta. I've had the same problem in Atlanta. It can be very, very tough, especially when the trains are down. But I was in LAX once. I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast. I was in LAX once, and there was a shooting in security while I was about to board the plane. Someone came in and shot a TSA agent. And I don't remember if they killed the TSA agent. I don't remember if they shot anyone else. And I knew something was going on because the alarms were going off in the airport But one of the strangest things was that I didn't think anything of it, because you hear alarms going off all the time in airports when someone accidentally opens a door. And the only thing that let us know, the people that were about to board the flight, was that there were people running into our terminal, like jumping over furniture and stuff to run into our terminal from the neighboring terminal where it was happening.
Wow.
And this was when I used to fly Southwest, and so we were lined up, like the cattle by the stanchions, and they just said, "Okay, everyone get on the flight." Like, they didn't do like A1 through 30, 31.
Everyone,
they just said,
every
"Go."
man for himself, go.
And we sat on that tarmac forever while passengers were pouring onto the tarmac. So they were putting passengers out the sky bridges and then going down the stairs onto the ground, and people were standing around the plane. And we eventually took off. We were probably the last flight out of LAX that day before they shut it down. It was a weird thing. And then somewhere out there, this exists, somewhere out there, there's a news interview of me when I got back to Columbus, of the news interviewing me about it. And it's horrible because I don't know how to do news interviews not as Michael Kent. So I was smiling the whole time talking about this shooting and like wide eyes, like, yeah, it was crazy.
I would have totally done the same thing.
Yeah.
Camera, microphone. Ding.
Yeah, exactly. I just turn it on. I can't help it. I just turn on Michael Kent for the thing. All right. So let's move on to question 4. We're going to play for a copy of my new book. The internet says it's true stories that sound made up but aren't, available at your favorite book selling establishment. Which one of these is a real nickname of France's Charles de Gaulle Airport? Is it A, the fish hook, B, the behemoth, or C, the octopus? One of these is a real nickname that people use to describe Charles de Gaulle Airport.
My gut instinct says the octopus. Not because I know anything real cool about Charles de Gaulle, but it might have been one of the first airports that had the things coming out with the terminals. So it would have made it look like an octopus from the air. And so to me, that makes it, the octopus.
You're right. And your reasoning is right as well. Yeah, it's called the octopus. It's an avant-garde design. This is Terminal 1 of Charles de Gaulle, and it resembles an octopus with a central circular building connected to several satellite piers. And it makes it, when it was built, a very unique piece of architecture. And I think by today's standards, it's still very unique just because of the avant-garde. Kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen, well, LAX has that tower with like the circular porthole type windows in it that's very avant-garde. And then there are pieces of LaGuardia that feel that way as well. It probably built all around the same time. But yeah, so you got that right. You have just won a copy of my new book, and
Nice.
But you don't get a sticker. You don't get a sticker. You get a copy of the new book. You got a joke, and you got either a first class ticket to Ireland or a pint of Guinness. So you're 3 for 4. Question 5 is the be all end all. This is the place where you redeem yourself for missing question number 3. If a movie were made about your life, who would play you?
Oh, can we go back in time?
Yeah.
Okay, because young Meg Ryan would play me.
Yeah,
Not
I see it.
current age Meg Ryan, but young Meg Ryan.
I see it. That's a good. I can go on board with that. Yeah, it's the talking in the mouth is, I can see. I get that. I used to
get compared to her a lot when I was in my 20s.
Is that right?
So, yeah.
I've never once in my life had a doppelganger, like a celebrity lookalike. I've never once had someone say, you look like this person or that person. Now, after a show, people will say, like, 20 years ago, they'd say, you remind me of Dane Cook. And then it was, you remind me of Jeff Dunham. I used to get that sometimes, too. But I've never had one based on, like, appearance. So I
have the weirdest one based on appearance, though. Okay. I used to get compared to Jack Nicholson. And here's why. So you remember the first movie, Batman, with Michael Keaton?
Yes.
And Jack Nicholson played the Joker?
Yes.
My smile, without the prosthetics, looks just like the Joker.
Yeah. Okay, I got it.
And
with
when
the cheeks.
when that movie was big, people would just, you got the Joker smile. You look like the Joker all the time.
For those of you watching the interview on Patreon, you can see what Joan is talking about there. Yeah, I would love to have one of those. And there's a subreddit where it's like, who is my doppelganger? Where you post a selfie and then people from the internet, will tell you.
Sounds terrifying.
That's why I haven't done it. It does sound terrifying. I haven't done it. I'm not sure I will. But I am very curious about the whole thing. So, well, you've done very well. You got that one right, which means you are allowed to come back on the podcast sometime.
Yay!
You went 4 for 5, but since you got 5 right, we're counting it as 5 for 5. Tell people where they can learn about where to see you perform, Joan.
So I'm at joanducour.com. I'm Joan Ducour on all the socials. I'm not really on X and I'm not on Blue Sky, but I'm kind of on the rest of the good ones. And then also, if you forget my last name, which is kind of hard, if you look up Joan and Magician, as far as I know, I'm the only living Joan in Magic right now, which makes it a little bit easier to search. So you got that going.
Pretty cool. I wish I could say that about my name. There are too many male magicians. That's the problem.
Michael was the most common baby's name in almost all of the 1970s and most of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I was working on a trick, so I learned that, and then I never did the trick.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I went by my middle name, Dean, for a while because I thought that was cool. And for a while, my parents were going to name me James, but they weren't concerned about confusion with James Dean, the actor. They were confused about me getting made fun of about Jimmy Dean sausages. That's what they were concerned about. So
my unofficial middle name is also Dean.
Why is that? How do you have an unofficial middle name?
I didn't have a middle name. And my mom said you can choose one when you're 18. And so I chose my grandfather's middle name, which was Dean. And I thought Joan Dean sounded cool. And then I realized all the legal loopholes you had to do to make that your official middle name. And I was like, couldn't be bothered. So it's still my
wife did it. My wife did that because she didn't have a middle name either. So she turned her maiden name into her middle name and then took my last name. And I can remember that being a headache only because last week she got a real ID and had to go through all of the crap that people who change names need to go through to get that. It was a pain. So
my fiance had that because some places he's listed as Benjamin and Ben and Benny, and he's really legally Ben. So I was very grateful that I never went through all that.
Yeah. Easier just to call it an unofficial middle name, I think.
Unofficial.
So fantastic. Well, it was a pleasure having you on, Joan. It was great to meet you, and I hope to have you on again sometime.
Yes, I had so much fun, and I do love the podcast, and I do, I'm subscribed, and I listen to it when it comes up on my feed, and it's great.
That means the world. Thank you so much for that. That's all for this week. Thank you so much to my friend Joan Ducour for being my guest, and thanks to you for listening. Here's a kid who has one of those pieces of luggage that you can sit on while your parents pull you around the airport. I want to kick him over every time I see them.
Thank you for listening to The Internet Says It's True. To listen to episodes ad-free and a week early, support us on Patreon. You can do that at patreon.com/Michael Kent. If you learned something just now that you didn't already know, go to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review with 5 stars and a few words. That helps us a ton, because that's how the algorithm works. I don't know what an algorithm is, but just do it. See you next week for a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True!
The Internet Says It's True would like to thank the Patreon subscribers whose monthly contributions help to make this show possible. Sean Brown, Joshua Endress, Dallas Ray, Bryce Swanson, Eugene Anderson, Jim and Joanne Martin, Mitch and Andrew Joseph Kemplin, and the show's official emperor, Kick Track. The show is written and produced by me, Michael Kent. The theme song is by Finite Music Forge, and all audio clips in this episode are used for education and commentary and used under Fair Use Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107. You can listen to past episodes by searching for The Internet Says It's True wherever you get your podcasts, and you can see bonus content at patreon.com/Michael Kent.